So I did my presentation and policy memo on investor pay model for credit rating agencies. So a little bit of background. The big three credit rating agencies have traditionally dominated the credit ratings industry. They comprise of Moody's, S&P, and Fitch, and they operate on the issuer pay model. So the way this works is banks bring them securities that they wish to sell to investors, and they bring them to the big three and have them evaluate it and put a grade on it to tell investors whether it's a safe investment or not. This creates a conflict of interest since the revenues for the big three is dependent on the issuers or the banks bringing them securities to grade, and in order to keep them coming back to them, and using their services, they decided to work to lower the ratings, the standards for grading these securities, and help them inflate the credit ratings for thousands of mortgage-backed securities and collateralized debt obligations that were in reality junk securities. And because of this, investors they took the endorsement from these credit rating agencies and the fraudulent credit ratings, and they bought a bunch of these what in reality were junk securities, but they were marketed as investment grade securities. And eventually the housing bubble burst, and a lot of these securities went bad, and this was partly responsible for the credit crisis. So an alternative model is investor pay model, and instead of having the banks bring securities for them to the big three to evaluate, investors would subscribe to a credit rating agency to obtain their credit analysis services. And this would help reduce conflict of interest because these agencies have no incentive to inflate the grades for the investors. And this would align interests of the credit rating agencies with that of investors, and it would work to help strengthen the integrity of the ratings process. Some supporting policy recommendations. One of them is to subsidize credit rating agencies that adopt an investor pay model. So because of the market dominance of the big three, it's really hard it creates barriers to entry for new credit rating agencies. So a government subsidy could help these investor pay credit rating agencies overcome these barriers by subsidizing the high startup cost. Another policy recommendation is to hold credit rating agencies legally liable for their ratings. So because issuers wanted high ratings, this would and the credit rating agencies would help them inflate their ratings. This would keep the credit rating agencies responsible and liable for their ratings. It would basically incentivize them to provide more accurate ratings, and it would promote investor pay credit rating agencies who would like to, because it would help provide an alternative for investors who want a more objective analysis instead of the firms who still have a conflict of interest. Another policy recommendation is to require ratings reports to be more informative. So because the investor pay model can potentially reduce the revenue stream of rating agencies due to the problem of free riders, you can by making the ratings report more informative, there's an incentive to not free ride anymore, and this would help with address the problem of the revenue stream of credit rating agencies who adopt the investor pay model being too low compared to the issuer pay model. And that's my presentation.